Okay. So my wind chimes just went off outside, and there is genuinely no wind today. None. I checked, twice actually. I'm Emma, and I'm going to take that as exactly the sign I think it is. Today's reading is about your love story, not just who you might end up with, but honestly something bigger than that, who you're becoming on the way there. This is a longer one, so settle in, get comfortable, maybe grab something warm to drink, because I want to walk through every layer of this with you carefully and not rush a single piece of it. Let's begin. Your love story begins with who you're becoming. Before we even get into predictions, I want to share something both spiritual and genuinely research-backed, because I think it matters more than most love readings ever admit. The kind of love that actually lasts isn't usually built from desperation, from chasing, or from trying to be perfect enough to finally be chosen. Relationship researchers who've studied couples over decades found that lasting relationships come down to something much simpler than chemistry: how people handle conflict, how they repair after hard moments, and how they come back to each other afterward, again and again, over years. So if you're single right now and you're doing the work, healing your attachment style, working through old abandonment wounds, becoming more magnetic in a grounded way, I want you to hear this clearly. This reading isn't really about who you're meant to be with. It's about who you are becoming. Because the version of you who attracts lasting love is never the version who abandons herself just to be wanted. It's the version who knows her worth, who listens to her own body, who chooses emotional safety over intensity, and who no longer confuses anxiety with chemistry or a racing heart with actually falling in love. Always remember this. Your person will never require you to shrink or perform for them. You won't feel like you're walking on eggshells, overthinking every text, wondering if you should call first or wait 3 days so you don't seem too eager. Love with the right person will never feel like a test that you keep quietly failing without knowing the rules. The right person meets your growth. They recognize both your softness and your strength, and they honor both without trying to reshape either one into something more convenient for them. I also want to add something here that I think gets missed a lot in these kinds of readings. This isn't just about attracting someone else. It's genuinely about you continuing to build the life you'd want to be living, even if this person never showed up at all. Your career, your friendships, your sense of self, all of that stays yours regardless of the relationship. And ironically, that wholeness is exactly what makes you magnetic in the first place. Nobody is drawn to emptiness waiting to be filled. People are drawn to fullness that simply has room to share. This is the foundation everything else in this reading sits on top of. So before we talk about when or how or who, I needed you to hear this part first, because it changes how you'll recognize the rest when it actually arrives, instead of second-guessing it the way you might have with people in the past. This person will meet your growth, not your shrinking. Let's talk about who's actually coming, because across every version of this reading, certain threads keep repeating themselves, and I think that repetition itself is the message. This person tends to be someone stable in the material world, successful, hardworking, often already accomplished in their career, sometimes even in a leadership position, a business owner, someone people already look up to and go to for advice. But here's the important part. Their success was never why you're drawn to them, and it's never why they're drawn to you either. It's simply the environment they've built for themselves, not the reason for the connection. What consistently comes through is directness. This person tells you how they feel, and they tell you early, without a long, drawn-out guessing game. They're not playing games, not keeping their options open just in case something better comes along, not making you decode mixed signals. There's real air sign or fire sign energy in a lot of these readings. Someone honest. Someone who moves quickly once they're certain, because they've already been through relationships that taught them exactly what they don't want anymore. When they find something real, they don't see the point in waiting years to prove it. because they've already wasted time on situations that weren't it. They also tend to be deeply loyal. The kind of loyal that shows up consistently rather than just in big dramatic gestures on special occasions. Following through on plans they made weeks ago. Calling when they say they will. Showing up when it actually matters, not just when it's convenient for their schedule. And there's a real emotional intelligence here too. Someone who's done their own healing work, who goes to therapy, who takes their own growth seriously, so that when they show up for you, they're showing up whole rather than needing you to complete some missing piece in them. What's beautiful about this is the mutual respect underneath it. This isn't a relationship where one person is chasing and the other is simply tolerating being chased, sitting back and letting themselves be pursued. This is two people who recognize the same caliber of effort, the same depth in each other from fairly early on. You won't feel like you're constantly convincing them of your worth or auditioning for a callback. They'll already see it clearly, sometimes before you fully see it in yourself, which is honestly one of the more healing parts of this whole story. There's also something worth naming here about how this person handles your independence. They won't feel threatened by your ambition, your friendships, your own goals outside the relationship. If anything, they'll actively want you to keep growing in your own direction, because a relationship between two whole people simply functions differently than one built on need. That's part of what makes this connection sustainable rather than exhausting. Let go of what was never meant to stay. Now for the part that's a little less comfortable to hear, but genuinely necessary. Across nearly every version of this reading, there's a consistent message about release. Attracting this kind of love requires actually closing the door on the past, not just physically, but energetically too. That means letting go of old contact information, old photos still saved somewhere, old situationships that never valued you the way you actually deserve to be valued. I know it can feel tempting to leave that door open just slightly, just in case someone changes their mind, just in case they come back different this time. But if someone didn't value you the first time around, they will not magically value you more the second time simply because time has passed. You accepted certain treatment once, and if you allow it back in, they'll assume, correctly, that you'll accept it again. That's simply how these patterns work, and it rarely breaks on its own without a real, deliberate ending on your part. Fully closing that door isn't bitterness, and it isn't giving up on love either. It's actually what makes room for something real to enter your life without competing for space with old ghosts. There's also a strong thread here about breaking inherited patterns, relationship dynamics passed down from parents or grandparents, whether that's how conflict was handled in your household growing up, how loyalty was tested, or unhealthy dynamics that quietly became the norm without anyone ever naming them out loud. You are very likely the one meant to break that pattern in your family line. Not by forcing it dramatically, but by simply refusing to repeat what didn't work for the people who came before you. Your future children, if that's part of your path, won't inherit the same wounds because you did this releasing work first, quietly, probably without much recognition for how hard that actually is. This release also applies internally. And I think this part matters just as much as letting go of other people. Self-doubt about whether you're lovable enough, whether you're too much, whether you've been single too long for some hidden reason. All of that needs to be gently set down too. Not because those feelings aren't understandable, given whatever you've been through, but because they don't reflect the actual truth of what's written for you. Clearing this out isn't about rushing or forcing anything to happen faster. It's about making sure that when the right person does arrive, there's actually room for them to land, instead of them having to compete with old fears for space in your heart. This is built to last, not just to begin. Once this connection actually begins, and across these readings it tends to move noticeably fast once it starts, the theme that comes up again and again is longevity. This isn't a fling energy, and it isn't a slow burn uncertainty stretched out over years either. Once both people recognize what they've found, there's very little hesitation left between them. You'll both have already been through enough separately to know exactly what you don't want, which makes recognizing what you do want feel almost immediate when it finally shows up. There's a strong theme of building here too. A home designed together from the ground up, sometimes literally with actual construction and finishes chosen together. Sometimes more about building a shared life, shared finances, shared long-term goals that both of you actually believe in. Family often comes up clearly in this energy, whether that's biological children, blended family, or found family in some other meaningful form. And there's a real emphasis on raising that next generation, or influencing the people around you, with more emotional intelligence than what came before you in your own upbringing. There's also a consistent thread about balance, about this finally being a relationship where what you give and what you receive are actually fair and reciprocal. Not a one-sided dynamic where you're pouring out constantly and quietly waiting to be filled back up in return. A genuine back and forth, where support flows both directions, without either person keeping score or bringing up old debts during arguments. That balance is often what makes this particular connection feel different from everything that came before it. Less like effort, less like managing someone else's needs, more like ease. And finally, timing, because I know that's usually the part everyone actually wants to know. Several specific windows show up again and again across this reading. Certain months where things shift noticeably, sometimes unexpectedly quickly after a long stretch of feeling stagnant. You likely won't need to force any of this along yourself. When it's ready to move, it moves largely on its own, often faster than you expected, because so much of the groundwork has already been quietly laid, both by you, through the healing and releasing we've already talked about, and by forces working in your favor that you can't always see clearly yet from where you're currently standing. So that's your reading today. Whatever landed for you, let it actually sit with you for a moment before you move on with your day, rather than rushing straight past it. This is written, and it's closer than it might currently feel from where you are right now. If this resonated, drop a comment below. Even one word helps this find the next person it's meant for. Like this video, subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you very soon in the next reading. Sending you so much love. Bye!